Al Jazeera's Hani Mahmoud in Rafah in southern Gaza. I want to ask you about the reaction to this proposal by Israel that it might carry out an attack on Rafah in a moment. But just first of all, talk us through the latest attacks that have been happening there.
Yes, we're looking just a little over 24 hours at least 40 Palestinians. The vast majority of them happen to be displaced families who've been sheltering inside residential homes or tents or evacuation centers across Rafah city. In central Rafah city, the northern part and the eastern part of the city, overcrowded, densely populated areas full of Palestinians who've been displaced from the northern part and Gaza city. More attacks on residential homes. But the latest of what seems to be for a lot of people here is an attack on civil order, is the systematic, intentional targeting of police departments and police personnel here. So far, we're looking at 3 separate attacks on police personnel, including the director of the investigative departments here, in addition to the director of the police department. At later hours yesterday, in the morning, 3 people were killed in a car in the western part of Rafah city. That's the director of the investigative department, along with 2 of his assistants. At later hours, at about late afternoon hours, another 3 police personnel were inside their car in one of the in the central area of Rafah city, were targeted and killed. A lot of people reacting to this. This is the beginning of this operations in Rafah city, and they look at it as a way the Israeli military is following just to cause some sort of civil disorder, civil collapse in the city. It's important to point out the police department here in Rafah city have been working very hard to secure the delivery of trucks, humanitarian trucks, been trying to cause some sort of stability inside healthcare facilities and in front of food distribution points. And such an attack is only an indication that we are ahead of some sort of civil collapse within the coming days if it continues to happen. In earlier hours today, ongoing artillery shelling of the eastern part of the city. And it's just important to point out that Rafah hasn't been largely safe for Palestinians, not for the local residents who live in Rafah, but also for half of the population of the Gaza Strip who became displaced and forced as ordered by the Israeli military to come to Rafah city. A lot of people who got to the city in the initial weeks of the war were killed within just a short period of time of their arrivals, or sheltering inside the residential homes or in the evacuation zones at the western part of the city.
Hani, let's just move to the backdrop to all of this, which is the announcement that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has instructed the military to put together a plan for an offensive on Rafah and also to put together a plan to evacuate Rafah. How are people reacting to that?
Very frustrated, and in fact, there isn't a lot of trust going on here because they have this terrible experience with Israeli evacuation orders since the beginning of the war. People who were told to evacuate the northern part in Gaza city were given these sharp orders to the central area, to Khan Yunis, and here in Rafah city, because they were specifically told in order to avoid being bombed, they had to go to certain designated zones by the military. But within a short period of time of their arrival, they were bombed and they were killed. So it just, for the most part, these evacuation orders have been very confusing, contradictory, and misleading. And there isn't much trust going on with the Israeli narrative. So far, it's all based on allegations that not supported by substantial evidence whatsoever. Almost everything the military has said, what we see on the ground is quite the contrary. And that's why people here are not only frustrated, but also do not have any other options at all. The options available are either equivalent to none or very, very limited. We're talking about a southern part of the border of the city. It's the Egyptian-Gaza border, which people hoping are not going to be forced to cross to the Egyptian side, because this will only feed into a permanent displacement. There is no way whatsoever they will be able to get back, and to going back to the northern part through this corridor passage. Not only they are not safe, and it hasn't been guaranteed that they're going to be safe, but they also talking about going back to a wasteland, the entire northern part and central area that have been turned into a pile of ruins and largely a wasteland with no services, with no civic institutions whatsoever, to the point it is becoming uninhabitable by creating difficult conditions on the ground to make it unlivable.
Hani, thank you very much indeed. Hani Mahmoud talking to us from Rafah in southern Gaza.